The 6 Democratic lawmakers who appeared in a video last week telling military members they must refuse orders they find illegal are tonight on the administration's radar. Federal investigators want to talk to them following the president's proclamation that they should be arrested. Correspondent David Spunt has the latest on that tonight. Good evening, David.
Brett, good evening to you. We are told investigators from the Justice Department, which includes the FBI, are making initial outreach to staff members on Capitol Hill to set up interviews with those 6 members of Congress who appeared in this controversial video. The 2 senators and 4 representatives, all Democrats, urged those serving in the military they can, quote, refuse illegal orders, end quote. This after the U.S. military conducted more than 20 deadly military strikes on suspected drug boats in international waters. Brett. The legality has been questioned since there was no congressional authorization. President Trump calling for the prosecutions of those he calls, quote, traitors, accusing them of, quote, seditious behavior. Now, the DOJ is not commenting on any potential probe, where or when interviews would take place, but we're told they could be soon. In the meantime, separate from any DOJ questioning, Senator Mark Kelly is being investigated, as we reported yesterday, by the Pentagon. The Arizona Democrat and husband of former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords is a retired naval officer and still subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. War Secretary Pete Hegseth threatened to call Kelly back into active duty to face court-martial punishment.
I never questioned any order, and you're required to follow all legal orders. You're also required not to follow illegal ones. And I think most people can figure out, it just takes some common sense in what would be an illegal order. But I think it's important for people to know that they need to be able to stand up and speak out.
Several of the lawmakers issued a joint statement late today saying they, quote, we will not be bullied, end quote. Senator Alyssa Slotkin is a former CIA analyst, Brett, and the others didn't serve as long as Senator Kelly in the military and are not subject to being called back into active duty to face any discipline in the military community. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Hegseth announced that he wants a review by December 10th on Senator Mark Kelly by the Navy Secretary. Brett.
Okay, David Spunt, thanks.
We're working on that final war. It's not easy, but I don't know. I think we're going to get there.
That framework is on the table, and we are ready to move forward together with the United States of America. And I'm ready to meet with President Trump. And there are sensitive points to discuss. We have them still.
We are naturally ready, as the president said, to discuss specific wording, because a number of issues there certainly require clarification.
Devil's always in the details, but it does appear, or at least the signals are coming from the White House and other places, that there are closer to a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine to end the war. President putting out a Truth Social about the Ukraine war. The original 28-point peace plan, which was drafted by the United States, has been fine-tuned with additional input from both sides, and there are only a few remaining points of disagreement. I have directed my special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to meet with President Putin in Moscow, and at the same time, Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll will be meeting with the Ukrainians. I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelensky and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end this war is final or in its final stages. So we've seen a number of iterations, but this seems like it's coming at least to a head. Let's bring in our panel. Matthew Continetti, scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, Wall Street Journal opinion columnist, Susan Page, Washington bureau chief at USA Today, and Leslie Marshall, Fox News contributor. Matthew, there are positive signals. Ukraine, Russia, the U.S. Obviously, the devil's in the details.
The devil's always in the details. This living, breathing document, as Secretary Rubio called it, has grown. It's grown in a way that it seems to satisfy the Ukrainians, even though there's some outstanding issues that President Zelensky and President Trump will decide together. But the question that remains, Brett, as always, is what will Russia do? What will Vladimir Putin do? And the fact of the matter is, throughout this lengthy process where President Trump has been trying nobly to end the war in Ukraine, the Ukrainians have, with pressure, come to the American position time and again, and Russia always says niet.
Yeah. Susan, interesting, the special envoy Steve Witkoff, the Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, going separate ways. They're using a number of different officials, as well as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and they're delivering these messages separately to try to get them to come together before the president gets involved. You know, this is after Alaska, after these previous calls that we've had.
You know, there's clearly a plan that Russia will agree to, and there's a plan that Ukraine will agree to, but they are not the same plan. And that is sort of underscored by the fact that they're not really talking to each other, that you have these separate envoys going their separate ways. You know, the language is still optimistic, but it is, President Trump has really backed off his initial demand of a Thanksgiving deadline to reach this. It sounds to me like that he's prepared a little more for what we've seen before, which is sometimes hopeful signs. Certainly President Trump pushing for a resolution to this war. That would be, you know, everyone would be glad to see this war end. But until things like territorial concessions are worked out, it's hard to see how this gets done.
Right. And there may be, and we don't really know exactly where that stands. There was some talk that Russia demand of taking territory that they hadn't even taken yet in the war may be off the table. But we don't have the specifics, Leslie. The Ukrainian president tweeted out that last night Russia launched another attack at a time when Ukraine, together with America, Europe, and many others around the world, are working virtually around the clock to stop the bloodshed. That attack was on Zaporizhzhia, the regional administration. And there's, you know, these attacks have been pretty spectacular as far as their reach inside Ukraine, what they're doing. There's buildings on fire, and a lot of people are being killed. There is a tiredness on both sides if you talk to Ukrainians and Russians, but Putin has been the one that has struck deep into Ukraine time and time again.
Actually, and that goes to Matthew's point and also to Susan's point. Here are the big three for President Zelensky, and yeah, they're battered, they're beaten, they're worn, they're tired on both sides. Certainly the civilians and of course the military as well. But when you look at what he's asking for, he's saying, look, I want the European allies to sign on to this and be a part of this, and he's asking for a reassurance force because of exactly what you're talking about, Brett, if Moscow does this again. And to Matthew's point, you know, when somebody shows you who they are, you got to believe them. And what we have seen is Putin is not a man and a leader with this country and with these types of peacekeeping efforts to be trusted. And then, of course, to Susan's point, when it comes down to the territory, I mean, you know, Putin is not going to give up on that. He hasn't in the past, and neither is President Zelensky. So I'm not trying to rain on the parade here. I certainly want peace. I think everyone in the world does. But these territorial concessions have been the sticking point in the past, and I fear they might be now.
Yeah. But Matthew, last thing on this. I mean, there are levers to pull that push Putin's buttons, that put pressure on Putin. They haven't all been pulled yet.
No, they haven't. I think one key element is China. And that's why I think that President Trump's conversation with Xi Jinping yesterday was so interesting, Brett. I know that Xi Jinping initiated the call to talk about a dispute between China and Japan, but according to reporting, President Trump talked about Ukraine because, of course, China is fueling Russia's war in Ukraine. Secondary sanctions on China, their purchases of Russian oil, the same way that we're tariffing India for their purchases of Russian oil, could put the pressure on Putin to sign a deal that leaves Ukraine in a defensible position for the future.
Yeah, speaking of the U.S.-China talks, here's the Treasury Secretary.
We're always going to be rivals. That's natural. But are there things we can do together? Yes. We have the relationship in a good place.
Yes, we need a lot of things, but we also are a country that could replace every single thing we get from China. And the president's shown a policy, America First policy, that's going to replace some of them. And if China waits too long, we'll replace them all.
Yeah, it's tough talk, Susan, but in the interim, you've got American consumers, and you have the fallout from all of that and how that develops with China.
Yeah, and if you know, if you're talking about the things that Americans care most about, inflation would probably be on top of that list. And there is, of course, concern that tariff policy, especially from China, from whom we buy so very many goods, that this will be reflected in people's Christmas purchases, in their cost of living. And there's no issue that resonates more politically in the United States than that. Americans happy to stand up to China, but concerned, I think, about the effect on their own kitchen tables discussions.
Yeah, we'll see. And they all talk about increased relationship, more talking between U.S. and China. We'll see where that goes. All right, the latest reaction to this fallout from the illegal orders video continues to happen. The investigation's stepping up now. Leslie, take a listen.
You can't have a functioning military if there is disorder and chaos within the ranks. And that's what these Democrat members were encouraging.
I said something that was pretty simple and non-controversial, and that was that members of the military should follow the law.
What he and his colleagues did was inappropriate. He could have taken a step back and said, why am I sending this message, which clearly is an insult to our chain of command?
Leslie, it's now 3 days of coverage after this video. What do you make of it?
I think it's going to be a nothing burger, and I think politically it's a really bad idea. The President of the United States is not served. Pete Hegseth does not have anywhere near the level and rank of these 6 individuals. And there are a lot of people in the United States who say, what was wrong with a Democrat or Republican, especially, if they're veterans, because they're veterans first, Democrat and Republican second. And they look at this and they say, well, what is wrong? This is part of the U.S. military code of justice that you're not supposed to follow illegal orders. Here's another thing, though, Brett. This is very difficult legally to prosecute. And on top of that, there were people on January 6th that said that they were guilty of sedition, and the president pardoned them all. So, like I said, not a good mountain to die on.
But Matthew, Martha and others have asked some of these 6, what are the illegal orders, and they haven't really laid them out.
The fact that they haven't been able to produce a single illegal order just shows that this was an opportunistic play by the Democrats to their left-wing base. And I think Republicans are unified in their anger over these congressmen, and that will help the president in the fight ahead.
All right. Panel, thanks.
The FBI hitting back at criticism over its takedown of the ISIS-inspired terror plot planned for Halloween, with at least 8 arrested so far across 3 states, including 2 accused of rehearsing the attack, which they named Pumpkin, at gun ranges, allegedly planning to shoot up Michigan nightclubs, and 2 athletes from a wealthy New Jersey suburb who allegedly offered ISIS-inspired beheadings on camera. FBI Director Kash Patel defending the takedown, quote, if we were to do this the way the media wanted us to do it, we would have waited for them to kill Americans and then arrest them. Deputy Director Dan Bongino adding, people would have died, a lot of them, that's a fact, and our work stopped it. Fox News contributor and former Assistant U.S. Attorney Andy McCarthy joins us now. So good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us, Andy. So this is kind of amazing to be sitting here in New York City and remembering all of the tips before 9/11 that got ignored, and then to hear people criticize the FBI for taking these steps in an obvious plot to commit a terrorist attack.
Yeah, well, this happens, Charlie, every time that there's an investigation that thwarts a terrorism attack. I've been through this situation myself in the 90s in the New York City landmarks plot. What happens is we want 2 things that are kind of contradictory. We want to be safe on the one hand and make sure that nothing happens, that we prevent mass murder attacks from happening. We also want to make sure that we have enough evidence to prove in court later on that there was a plot and they really were trying to mass kill people. And it actually is a source of some contention between investigators and prosecutors, because prosecutors always want to let the plot run as far as it can, like to the point of lighting the fuse before they stop and make arrests. In the meantime, the FBI knows that if the plot gets out of their control and people get killed, they're going to be blamed for it. So it's tension that goes on within an investigation, but what always happens at the end of the investigation is the FBI, as I think happened here, has thwarted a mass murder plot But since it hasn't happened, the defense lawyers and others who are sympathizers of theirs will say that there was no real plot and they're exaggerating the whole thing.
Right. It's kind of maddening, but you break that down very well. I want to change gears to this. The Pentagon is now saying it's investigating Senator Mark Kelly over that video where he urges troops to defy what he calls illegal orders. Of course, he doesn't actually spell out any of these supposedly illegal orders. Senator Kelly responding, saying, if this is meant to intimidate me and other members of Congress from doing our jobs and holding this administration accountable, it won't work. I've given too much to this country to be silenced by bullies who care more about their own power than protecting the Constitution. What do you see? Does the Department of Justice or anybody else have a case against these lawmakers who urged troops to defy orders?
Yeah, this is one of the dumbest controversies. I really wish both sides would take it down a notch. The Democrats, if they want to complain about lawless orders, should specify what orders they're talking about. That's perfectly reasonable. But in a country with the First Amendment, they're allowed to make even incorrect statements. As it happens, it's a correct statement of law to say that troops don't have to follow illegal orders, and you'd never be able to make a case out of that. At most, what you would have if they were truly interfering with the carrying out of lawful orders, you'd have insubordination. You wouldn't have anything like sedition or insurrection, which requires like a violent uprising. So I think the Democrats are wrong to have pitched this the way they did. The reaction to it is a way, way overreaction, and we'd be better off if both sides just took it down about 11 notches.
Well, we always appreciate your calm, level legal analysis. Andy McCarthy.
Thanks.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
The FBI now speaking to Capitol Police about interviewing the 6 Democrats with military and intelligence backgrounds in that video, telling U.S. troops and intelligence officers that they can refuse illegal orders. The 4 House Democrats in the video saying, quote, no amount of intimidation or harassment will ever stop us from doing our jobs and honoring our Constitution. Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin, a former CIA officer, saying, quote, the president directing the FBI to target us is exactly why we made this video in the first place. He believes in weaponizing the federal government against his perceived enemies and does not believe laws apply to him or his cabinet, she writes. My next guest is a Medal of Honor recipient. U.S. Marine Sergeant Dakota Meyer received our nation's highest military honor for saving 36 lives, including 13 Americans in Afghanistan. He repeatedly ran into an ambush zone under heavy enemy fire to save his fellow Marines and civilians as well in Afghanistan in 2009. And for that, we honor his service, and we are honored to have Sergeant Meyer with us now. Sergeant, great to have you back with us. You are once again an active duty Marine, and so we thank you very much for your prior and present service to our country. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. And reservist.
Reservist. So let me just play this from Mark Kelly. This is from MS Now on Monday night. Watch.
I spent 25 years in the United States Navy. I flew 39 combat missions over Iraq and Kuwait. Let me start by saying I never questioned any order. And you're required to follow all legal orders. You're also required not to follow illegal ones.
So what do you think about this? When you look at this back and forth and you hear about the investigation, the questions that are being asked of these former military and intel officials, what's your reaction?
I think first off, anytime you have to, it's unacceptable. It's absolutely, the potential effects of this could be catastrophic. This is not a partisan issue. And I think a telltale sign is first off, Senator Kelly, you should not try to be a tough guy. You should back up. You should stick in your lane. I got 39 missions, whatever. But I think that what was concerning to me when I first heard this was my biggest fear was, do they now not trust our men and women in uniform? Is that what they're trying to, throw out there? Because if that's not it, day one, we are taught to, not to follow illegal orders, right? Like unlawful orders. I mean, this is the basics. I mean, this is something that's reiterated every time you raise your right hand to re-enlist or any aspect of that. It's something that is practiced every single day. And so it's not something that needs to be reminded of to all people of our troops, but it's the intentions behind it. Yes, they are skirting their legal aspect of it, but they're also manufacturing an issue that is just not there, simply as you've seen past this. I mean, I was fully expecting them to come out with what has been illegal orders and all this, and none of them can answer that. And really what my question, and the question that needs to be asked to all of them, is, do you just not trust our men and women in uniform anymore? Is that the issue? Or is it the fact that you don't like what the president's doing? And I think that with this being an isolated issue, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But when you've heard them over the past few weeks call things they didn't like illegal, and then you see judges overrule it, from Venezuela to the National Guard deployment to Iran, every time the president does something or this administration does something, they automatically go to that aspect of illegal when it's not true. So where is this? And I just think that there needs to be accountability.
So when you say that it could be catastrophic when this message is sent to our men and women in uniform, what do you mean? What do you envision as a catastrophe, potentially, as a result of this?
Yeah, Martha, I mean, it's not like you go to war and these things are black and white and you're fighting an enemy today, especially, that's in uniform, that shows up there. I mean, with the enemy living amongst where they live at, it's not like you're going to a battlefield like back in World War I, where you're only having the enemy on the battlefield. I mean, the enemy today, I mean, they are living amongst the population and the civilians, and the complexity of the environment is insane. And, it's already complex with these rules of engagements to these locations, that these people, these lawmakers, are the very ones that make the decisions on what we do. And then they make the rules of engagement that we have to follow. And then, when we come back and we're having to make these decisions in these complex situations, and now we have to worry about if the law is going to stay the same, depending on what political administration is in.
How do you feel about the investigation into this video and the fact that these members are being questioned about their motives in making it? Do you think that's a legitimate investigation?
I think that if we don't hold the line on this, Martha, and you can mark my words right now, if we don't hold the lines on this and we don't make the uniform and messing with our men and women who are willing to volunteer to serve our country and willing to give their lives and put their lives on the line, if that can be used as political points and we don't draw a line there, I don't know where it will stop. And that has got to be something that is out of bounds. It's out of lane, out of the lane. Like, they cannot use this. And I expect them to fully be held accountable the same way I would expect myself to be held accountable if I followed an unlawful order.
I don't think anybody can say it better or with more authority. Medal of Honor recipient Sergeant Dakota Meyer, thank you very much, sir, for your service once again. We wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for making your points here today. We appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
You as well.
The turkeys being pardoned today go by the names of Gobble and Waddle. When I first saw their pictures, I thought we should send them, I shouldn't say this. I was going to call them Chuck and Nancy. But then I realized I wouldn't be pardoning them. I would never pardon those two people.
That was President Trump serving up some insults at Chuck and Nancy at the annual White House turkey pardon, sparing Gobble and Waddle from the Thanksgiving dinner table. And while those birds got a break, the seditious six might be wishing they could snag a pardon of their own. The FBI is seeking to interview the 6 members of Congress who made a reckless video about troops disobeying illegal orders. Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, he's facing a Pentagon probe and possible court-martial over his role in the video. And he's still clueless on what illegal orders Trump has given. Watch.
I said something that was pretty simple and non-controversial. And that was that members of the military should follow the law. And in response to that, Donald Trump said, I should be executed. I should be hanged. I should be prosecuted.
Were there specific, potentially illegal orders that you were thinking about that were the sort of precipitating cause for you guys to get together and do that?
Here's the thing, Rachel. You don't want to wait for your kid to get hit by a car before you tell them to look both ways. The whole thing's almost comical.
Arizona's other senator, Ruben Gallego, he is providing covering fire for his fellow senators and telling the Trump administration to watch out.
Donald Trump's going to be gone a couple years. And if you're part of the military that is going after sitting senators, sitting members of Congress, and part of, the weaponization of government, there will be consequences, without a doubt. So, I think there's going to be a lot of officers that are going to be part of this, potential tribunal, if they want to call it that, they're going to be looking over their shoulders.
An AOC is calling President Trump's mental stability into question over the whole situation.
The president's remarks I think, indicate a level of instability. It's not just shocking, it's not just offensive, it's bizarre, it is erratic, it's volatile, and I think it indicates a mental state that we should all be questioning right now, whether that's emotional, mental, what have you. It is not normal to make these accusations. It is not normal to invoke these kinds of threats of violence.
All right, Greg.
Yes.
Which one of those Looney Tunes do you want to start with?
Well, I would like to paraphrase The Who and say, meet the new hoax, same as the old hoax. This is a military video that managed to make something out of nothing. So you have, it's the pure structure. One, you begin with an insinuation. That becomes an imaginary problem that is bolstered by, and this is important, the credentialed class, which is exactly what they did with the denial of Hunter's laptop and Russian collusion. You find so-called experts. Then this is amplified by a receptive media. You saw that with Russia collusion and the Fine People hoax. And then you get the Trump response, which is then incorporated into the hoax that he is authoritarian. Look how he responded. However, this can only work if you have no memory or no scruples, because there's no credibility among the Democrats or the media. The big picture here, why is this happening? The power and the currency of the Trump administration is energy, and the goal is to deplete that energy to handicap the White House and to handicap the rest of us. Tiring us out is their strategy. So when you see stuff like that, you realize the only value that you can give this thing is to absorb the story. Instead of absorbing it, you observe it. In fact, that's the way you should treat all news, is when a story is coming at you, you don't let it in. You just observe it. You let it swirl around you. You don't want to give it any energy, especially when they don't deserve your energy. Let the two discredited entities, the media and the Democrats, play ball between themselves. You cannot grant them any of your attention or your energy, given the Fine People hoax, the laptop cover-up, the Russian collusion, and especially, and most notably, the Joe Biden cover-up. If you take the word of the Democrats, then you probably still believe OJ is going to find the real killer, and he's dead. As for, and I'll shut up, the non-controversial thing that the astronaut says, it's kind of a half-truth in that it's obvious that you should not obey illegal orders. So that's non-controversial. What is controversial is that they did the video, which means it had nothing to do with that. So you don't gather all the elite Democrats together and make a video to state something obvious or banal. You do it to create dissent and chaos and deceive Americans.
And it seems to me, Jesse, that for quite a long time now, these certain liberals and Democrats with lots of followers have gotten used to throwing out outlandish and false defamatory statements, especially about the president, and no one ever asked for specificity. Now you see someone just even say like, oh, which one? Which one are you talking about? And they immediately deflate because they are unable to cite anything that the president has done that isn't actually perfectly constitutional or within bounds.
And you got to give the mainstream media credit for asking a question. Usually they just buy it. We're not going to let the Democrats mess with the military anymore. We're just not going to let them do it. They already did it with DEI. They did it with trans. They had drag queen story hour on Army bases. It's done. We're done with it, okay? They've already destroyed morale enough. And we're sick of cleaning up their messes in Ukraine and Iran at the border. We have a lot to handle, all right? And it's only been a year. This is ending, and it's ending now. the Senate also treated Pete like crap. He's not going to take this from another senator. There's a chain of command. Pete now controls Kelly. Kelly's going to come in, and he's going to get a little bit of a spanking. And Pete already looked at the war medals this guy had in his chest, and they're like, they're all cockeyed. They're in the wrong direction. The guy doesn't even know how to dress up. This Democrat Party charged Donald Trump like 94 times, 6 trials. They raided his house, they leaked his taxes, they spied on his campaign, and arrested everybody in his orbit, campaign managers, advisors, even his little valet. And they're upset that someone has to talk to an FBI agent? Really? Come on. You didn't think we were going to hit back? You think you were going to get away with all that and we were going to do anything about it? You got to be out of your mind. They're probably used to us not doing anything because we used to not. We used to just take it, and now we're not taking it anymore. So if you go over the line, we caught you, and now you have to pay a price. Doesn't matter. They have no idea what they just walked into. After what they did to us, then pardoned everybody and then put stuff in burn bags? No, we're going to hit back, and we're going to hit back kind of hard.
Jessica, do you agree that a video calling on the military writ large to disobey the commander-in-chief's orders is in fact seditious?
No, I don't. And I don't think anyone in their right mind would agree with that. The video is explicit that you should not obey unlawful orders, that actually your sworn duty is to the Constitution, not to a commander who's asking you to do illegal things. We've talked about this now 3 days in a row. So 3 days in a row, I'm going to say it would have been more ideal if there was specificity about the type of orders that you are hearing from lower ranking officers that they're concerned about. So if that's Venezuelan boat strikes, like why did General Halsey resign from the Southern Command?
You don't know.
That's why I said why. It's in the form of a question. You're right. He just wanted to spend more time with his family.
You don't know if people are even...
Leave his family out of it, Jessica.
Don't make me talk about Todd Starnes. Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump addressing that meeting of generals and saying, you're going to have to help us clean up these blue cities, those kinds of things. But to Greg's point about, you shouldn't be elevating these people. They are doing exactly the wrong thing in Greg Gutfeld's mind, because now the face of the Democratic Party is Mark Kelly. It's not Zohran Mamdani. You have Donald Trump smiling at Mamdani, and you have Mark Kelly, who's a decorated veteran, who is married to basically like the equivalent of an American saint in Gabby Giffords, who's won a purple state, has hugely high favorabilities, and now people are talking about the fact that the Democratic Party is represented by a guy like that. I'm personally thrilled. That is what my party is, the party of Mark Kelly's out there.
So this was a political move.
No, it's just a nice afterthought that we're getting a bounce out of it, right?
You're getting a bounce out of this? You look exhausted talking about it 3 days in a row. And you're complaining you have to do an FBI interview, which, if you're not truthful, you might have to go to prison.
Pete Hegseth is spending his days melting down online instead of being over in the UAE negotiating peace between Ukraine and Russia. The Secretary of the Army is the one doing that. Pete's saying, I think your medals are in the wrong order, even though it's supposed to be a mirror image or something I read on the internet. I don't know. I'm not a veteran. But I'm just saying that I doubt that Mark Kelly, a guy who's even gone to space, 4 times, knows which way his medals are supposed to go.
He doesn't know how
that. Maybe he doesn't. You tell him.
You know what? Maybe he doesn't understand the gravity of the situation.
LOL a little.
A little, Kennedy.
Well, I will say this, Greg. When one goes to space, as you know, their telomeres lengthen, which we would think is fortuitous. Unfortunately, when they come back to Earth, they drastically shrink. And I think that's what's happened to Senator Kelly. Also, he has almost made his full transformation into Sloth from the Goonies.
Wait, what? What shrinks?
Milky. The telomeres.
Oh.
Yes.
What are those?
They're...
I like that you said O first.
Basically, the things at the end of genes that determine the aging process.
Okay.
So the longer they are...
It's not the other thing.
The less... It's
things?
not the other thing, but this he is talking about members of the military the way he talks about a thick-headed child. That is condescending and unacceptable. And we can't just say, well, they all served. Alyssa Slutnik was in the sea. That's what Greg called her yesterday. I
By
know
accident.
that is not her name.
By accident.
But, it's like, she was in the CIA. These guys are experts. Then why is everyone in the military protesting? Because they are being talked down to like they are idiotic children. They are not. They understand the gravity of the job they have signed up for and the oath that they have sworn, which will not be undermined by doubt that is simply being issued for political purposes by people who are rendering their service a little less impressive by stunts like these. And that's what it is. It is a stunt. And if it weren't, if there were specific, actionable issues at hand that they had to be standing up to, they would be able to list them to any member of the media who was like, okay, what are the illegal things? They would say A, B, C, and possibly D. And as a lawmaker, I'm going to fix all of these things so the president doesn't extend the bounds of his power. But they haven't said that at all, because that's not what it is, because it is a stunt.
Senator Slotkin did enumerate them in a TMZ interview.
Oh, that's right. TMZ is the news. Thank you.
Well, I'm just saying.
Okay, let's figure out what's going on here with former Navy JAG officer Kelly Stimson. Kelly, nice to see you again, and good morning to you. As you understand it, what's happening?
Well, they believe that it's possible that Captain Kelly, retired Captain Kelly, who is subject to the UCMJ under Article 2, committed a crime, and so they're going to investigate that. And regardless of whether that proves to be true or not, the fact is that this video undermined good order and discipline. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were essentially wink, wink, nod, nod, telling members of the military that they should reflexively doubt the legality of the commander-in-chief's orders. And that's where they crossed the line politically.
Okay, all right, a couple of things here. Jack Keane was with us yesterday, and we asked him about that whole thing about chain of command that you mentioned, all right? Here's Jack Keane on that.
These are irresponsible, reckless political leaders, and I normally don't go after political leaders in our country, but they deserve it now. They're absolutely undermining the military chain of command. And who do they think our soldiers are? They're insulting the intelligence of our soldiers and their moral commitment to serve the nation by making these outrageous statements.
Kelly, what do you make of that right there?
Well, the general's correct, as usual. And the fact is that there's one commander-in-chief, and only one. And the proper way to litigate these policy disputes is either, for one, Congress to reclaim their war powers in Article 1, Section 8 and declare war or authorize the use of military force. Therefore, the president has the top authority under the Congress's passing of that type of law, or litigate these issues, which are happening in states where people are calling up National Guards. And so imagine, Bill, the scenario where Republican members of Congress would have issued the same type of warning to members of the military when we sent 25,000 troops to Haiti under President Clinton, saying you should reflexively question that, when Congress didn't authorize that authorization. And there's scores of other issues in times in our history when the president sends troops into harm's way and Congress didn't authorize it. So this is the wrong way to go about this.
Okay, I think here's the critical soundbite. We played it yesterday. Here is Alyssa Slotkin when she was asked about it on ABC on Sunday. Keep in mind the key word here is illegal. Roll this.
Do you believe President Trump has issued any illegal orders?
To my knowledge, I am not aware of things that are illegal, but certainly there are some legal gymnastics that are going on with these Caribbean strikes and everything related to Venezuela.
Okay, so you can address that, Kelly. And while you do that, if you were to investigate Senator Kelly now, it would have to go back to his time as active duty in the military, correct?
No.
No? Okay, then what would that be?
You can recall somebody who's retired, receiving retirement pay. I'm a retired Navy captain, he's a retired Navy captain, and bring them back on active duty and charge them with a crime. And it doesn't have to just be a military crime. It can be any federal or state crime under the Federal Assembly's Crime Act. But the problem is that when we've recalled people to active duty to prosecute them, almost in every instance it's been for a crime they committed while they were on active duty. Not in this situation where he's a senator giving a speech, not covered by the speech and debate clause because it wasn't a core legislative function. And so I don't think any military jury is ever going to convict this guy ever. So I think the punishment here is the process and ultimately not prosecute him or bring him back on active duty.
Let me try and just squeeze in one more question at the time that we have. There are some who have theorized that Democrats are setting up the commander-in-chief, President Trump, if they were to lose the House in the second half of this term, that they could go after him on something. Have you heard about that? What would fit that possible theory?
Well, that he is issuing illegal orders or acting outside the bounds of the four corners of his power as the commander-in-chief. The problem with that theory is that the Office of Legal Counsel in DOJ has already issued a classified memo, for example, saying that the strikes on boats in international water is lawful under the national interest test from previous OLC opinions. So they'd have to point to something other than what the current situation is.
Okay, Cully, thanks. Really appreciate your intel on all that. To be continued.
Breaking right now, the FBI is scheduling interviews with 6 Democrat lawmakers who encouraged military members to refuse what they called illegal orders from the president. Justice correspondent David Spun is following this live from Washington for us. Hi, David.
Well, hi, Sandra. Investigators from the FBI and DOJ, FBI is part of DOJ, are making this outreach to staff members on Capitol Hill to set up interviews with members of Congress who appeared in this controversial video. There are 6 of them. Now, these are the members. 2 of them are U.S. senators on the left, the 4 on the right, all representatives, all Democrats, all of them appearing in this video, urging those serving to ignore military orders if they deem them unlawful. A video set off a storm not only on Capitol Hill, but made its way to the Oval Office. President Trump calling for prosecutions of these members of Congress. The DOJ not commenting on any potential probe here. However, interviews with these members expected to take place in short order after the holiday. In the meantime, separately from any DOJ questioning, Senator Mark Kelly is being investigated by the Pentagon. The senator from Arizona and husband of former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords is a retired naval officer, and he's the subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Now, even though he's retired, the Pentagon yesterday announced Kelly could be called back into active duty to face punishment regarding his retirement and rank. Here he is last night reacting to all of this.
Let me start by saying I never questioned any order, and you're required to follow all legal orders. You're also required not to follow illegal ones. And I think most people can figure out, you know, just take some common sense in what would be an illegal order. But I think it's important for people to know that they need to be able to stand up and speak out.
Senator Slotkin is a former CIA analyst, and the other 4 did not serve as long as Kelly in the military and are not subject to being called back into active duty to face any military justice. Sandra?
Yeah, and I think that's left many to ask what illegal orders. Don't let people have to draw that conclusion. David Spun from the Justice Department on that for us. Thank you very much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.